Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Kansas City Royals. Thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying the series, would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like our videos, comment down below. If you don't like the videos and you've got comments, we'd love to hear those too about how we can make things more interesting. But we are at the end of the 2023 season. A successful but disappointing season for the Royals is the way that I would describe it. Successful in that we did achieve a winning record, which is the first winning record for Kansas City since they won the World Series back in 2015. We're going to have made a lot of money for our owner this season, which is positive, I guess. Record attendance for the Royals set a record of about 2.8 million people this year, which was the largest attendance in Royals history, more than even in the World Series championship year of 2015. So from that perspective, a reasonably successful season for the Royals. We've improved them each of the 2 years that we've been general manager. Unsuccessful, though, in that our goal is obviously to get to the playoffs and hopefully win it all one of these years, and we did not achieve that goal. We finished 6 games behind in the American League Central, 3rd place in the division, and we were also 3 games out for the wild card. So while there were definitely some positives to take from the season, all in all, we didn't really achieve the goal of getting the Royals back into the playoffs. So we'll have to move that on to next season and hope we can do better then. But before we start preparing for next season, going to take a look at how everyone performed this year and how the team performed and start trying to put a plan together for the changes we may potentially be wanting to make before the 2024 season begins. Taking a look at the Royals season, we started out okay. We're very average, perfectly average for March and April. Then we struggled in May and June, played great in July and August, and then we were doing okay in September till we finished at 3-7, and that definitely torpedoed any playoff chances that we had. Looking at our batting statistics, we were in the middle of the pack in most everything. We were second in batter WAR, but generally a middling offense. Not a lot of power. 14th in home runs, only 10th in walks, 10th in base running. But we still finished 7th in the American League in runs scored, so very average there. Our pitching was somewhat better. 5th in team ERA, 5th in runs allowed, 1st in hits allowed, opponents average, BABIP, and then we were also defensively 1st in defensive efficiency and 1st in zone ratings. So I think we have some potential with what we have here, as we'll talk about shortly, though. Still going to have to make some moves to get this team over the hump and hopefully get a few more wins in the record next year and hopefully at least get into a position where we are in a wild card game at the very least. Looking at the batting leaders for the team, no surprise that Bobby Witt Jr., last year's Rookie of the Year, is all over them for the Royals. Led the team in batting average, homers, ribbies, OBP, slugging percentage, OPS, WAR with a 6.4. Only missed out by 2 at-bats on leading the team there, but led the league in hits, runs, doubles. Tied with Kike Hernandez and Nicky Lopez for the lead in triples. Led the team in total bases, steals with 29. Just a dazzling season for the second-year player who we wrapped up to a long-term contract at the beginning of this season. So next year is going to be a big number, $23 million on the books for Bobby Witt Jr. We front-loaded his contract a little bit, so the 2024 season is going to be the most painful one for the next several years for us financially. Means we're not going to have a ton of money to play with this offseason and improving the team, so we're going to have to be a little creative since we're probably not going to be able to make a big splash in free agency. May need to look at making some trades perhaps to figure out how we're going to get this roster better for the 2024 season than it is right now. And before we get into the stats for all of our batters and pitchers, going to just take a look at a few people that are on the injured list right now. Taylor Floyd, reliever, out for now 6 months with a torn flexor tendon in his elbow. Split the year between Omaha and KC and pitched pretty well in both spots. In 21 innings in the big leagues, put up a 2.57 ERA, which was good for a 1.63 ERA plus. Has only spent 121 days in the majors so far, so hopefully he will be recovered from that injury by about the time spring training is beginning, and we can have him back and healthy next year. Nicky Lopez, our 28-year-old shortstop, another really nice season for him. Batted .282 and put up a league average OPS. Given his very strong fielding characteristics, that allowed him to put up a 4.7 WAR for us, which was the second best on the team behind only Bobby Witt Jr. He's a fan favorite, great personality. Unfortunately, we lost him for a few games down the stretch with that herniated disc, but he should be back and ready to go next year. And then Kike Hernandez, also out with a herniated disc at the end of the season. I'd say the results are definitely mixed from his first year with us. Played 114 games, hit 14 homers, drove in 50, batted .247, put up a 105 OPS plus, 104 WRC plus. So he was a slightly above average offensive player, which when you look at his basic batting ratings and even just kind of the history of his career makes sense. Obviously, we're hoping for a little more. He'll be an important player for us next year. So hopefully can have an even better season for us as a corner outfielder, and then with the versatility he has, a guy who can play, a lot of other positions other than right or left if need be in a pinch for this team. Turning to the rest of our pitching staff, the results were definitely mixed. Chris Bubic started the year on the IL, came back and went 6-5 in 23 games, but a 5.50 ERA and his 76 ERA plus was the worst of any of our starters. If you look at the other starters, Keller, Ross, Suarez, and Wisniewski, ERA pluses of 90, 98, 99, and 96. So we are really a very average type pitching staff with our starters. They're good, solid starters. They've been healthy and durable, which is great. And you can see, with the exception of Bubic, they all put up WARs between 1.1 and 2.2. But we really need a number one frontline starter. To me, that's the biggest glaring issue on this team. If we have a real frontline starter next year and everyone else kind of gets slotted back a spot, I think we'll be in a much better spot. Brad Keller went 11-15 for us with a 4.65 ERA. He is going to be a free agent after this year, so that's going to be a big decision for us. I made $4.8 million this year. He has been a consistently reliable starter for Kansas City over the years, but he may be looking for a paycheck. Let's just see what he's looking for right now. Actually, only about $4.8 million a year, so I think that's, a fair recognition that he's not really a frontline starter. So we could potentially look to bring him back at that kind of level. Joe Ross, free agent signing from last season, figured he was going to be about a league average type starter, and that's really what he was with a 98 ERA plus, a 100 FIP minus, a WAR of almost 2 for the season. Went 10-7 with a 4.28 ERA. Jose Suarez had a respectable season for us, pitched 33 games, 173 and 2/3 innings, 4.25 ERA. Very similar to Ross, 99 ERA plus, 100 FIP minus, the definition of a league average pitcher from Suarez. And then Hayden Wisniewski had a nice second season with us, 4.38 ERA, 96 ERA plus, 102 FIP minus. Again, we've got competent major league starters. We absolutely have that covered. The issue is what we need to do to either develop a real frontline starter or make a trade or a free agency acquisition to really bolster the front of our rotation. The bullpen was really solid. You can see going through the ERAs of all of the bullpen people here, with the exception of Colin Snyder with a 4.69 ERA and Aaron Ashby, who had a 4.87 ERA for the season. Everybody else in the bullpen had a 3.39 ERA or lower, so very respectable. Nick Anderson picked him up in a trade right before the trade deadline, 1.57 ERA in 23 innings for us. Did a nice job. Scott Barlow, solid season, was the closer at the beginning of the year and then lost his job and kind of moved into more of a setup role, but a 3.36 ERA, 17 saves on the year. Taylor Clark, a year removed from his All-Star game appearance, pitched 93 innings for us, struck out 88, 3.39 ERA. Nice results there. Dylan Coleman, solid season also, 103rd innings, 120 strikeouts. So actually I'd say that's more than solid, and his 3.23 ERA was good for a 130 ERA plus. Put up a 1 WAR for us, which was one of the best numbers of anyone in our bullpen. Amir Garrett remains a lefty specialist, just 26 and 2/3 innings, but he struck out 35 in that action with a 3.04 ERA. Scott Kobos, who we brought over in a trade with the Cubs, pitched pretty well for us, 31 strikeouts and 31 1/3 innings, 3.45 ERA. He should be a big part of this bullpen going forward. Already mentioned that Colin Snyder, one of the weaker performances, at least in terms of his ERA. Gabe Spire was up and down between Kansas City and Omaha at times, although he never actually pitched for Omaha this year. 2.93 ERA in 89 innings pitched. And then Aaron Ashby, the local boy that we traded for before the trade deadline, the 4.87 ERA for the season was not that great, but we feel he was miscast as a starter in Milwaukee. He pitched his way to a 5.64 ERA, starting many games for the Brewers. We brought him here and turned him into a reliever, and he was almost lights out for us. 26 innings pitched, 34 strikeouts, a 3-0 record, and 14 saves, and a 2.42 ERA while he was with us. So very excited to have Aaron Ashby back home in Kansas City and hopefully playing an important role for our bullpen for the next several seasons. Turning to our lineup, catcher has been a good position for us. Cam Gallagher, our backup, heading into his final arbitration year. The question is whether we're going to want to bring him back. He is a solid backup catcher, pretty good defensively, but he's expected to be making $4 to $4.5 million in arbitration, and we do have Tucker Barnhart, who spent most of the year at Omaha for us. If we can sign Tucker Barnhart for a more economical amount, it may be time to think about maybe trading away Cam Gallagher at the age of 30. Regardless of who our backup is, MJ Melendez will be the starter again. Had a really nice sophomore season, almost doubled his home run production from 13 to 24, drove in 76 runs, batted .265, so he put up a 128 OPS and a 4.6 WAR, which was third best on the team, behind only Bobby Witt Jr. and Nicky Lopez. Really nice defensive catcher also, personality captain, and he made his first All-Star team this year in his sophomore season. So Melendez is a big part of what we want to be doing going forward. So is Nick Pratto, the first baseman. Unlike Bobby Witt Jr. and Melendez, it wasn't clearly a better season for Pratto in his second year. He did hit one more homer to get to 26 and drive in 10 more runs, but his batting average dipped 40 points to 214, and his OPS plus plunged to 93 from 138. Ultimately, his WAR was almost cut to a third of what it was, with a 1.3 WAR for the season. So he's a spark plug personality, good to have around, and we have him locked up for several years at very reasonable levels. Hopefully he can get a little closer to what he was as a rookie. Nico Horner had a nice year at second base, very good defensively, very good personality, good in the clubhouse. Batted .256, put up an 87 OPS plus and a 3.4 WAR for us. Happy to have him playing second base for the next several seasons, given his good defensive characteristics. Jeff McNeil came over in a trade deadline trade and really played well for us. Batted .309 and put up a 140 OPS plus in 51 games for us in the final couple months of the season. He is headed to arbitration and expected to make about $8 million. That's going to be a big number for this team, so we're going to have to decide whether we want to bring him back. He played primarily DH for us while he was with us, but certainly does have the versatility to contribute at other positions. Melvin Moreno, free agent signing from a year ago. The question is just his bat. He's got the glove, hit .256 in AAA, came up at the end of the year when we did put Nicky Lopez on the IL and was 0 for 7 in a couple of games, but perfect fielding. He potentially has a role on the team next year, but the bat is a little bit of an issue, and that's why I think Ryan Kreidler is probably more likely to be on the big team because he is close to a league average bat, although he only put up a 78 OPS plus this season, but pretty versatile, can play third and short. May look to see if we can have him spend a little time at second base in spring training next year just to make himself even more valuable and versatile defensively for the team. And then the last of the infielders, of course, Bobby Witt Jr. with a brilliant second year. Scored over 100 runs, drove in over 100 runs, 27 dingers, 39 doubles, stole 29 bases, so a member of the 2020 club in each of his 2 seasons, was named an All-Star for the second straight season. Overall, 871 OPS, which was good for a 138 OPS plus, and as I mentioned earlier, a 6.4 WAR for him on the season. His BABIP was 343, so it's certainly conceivable that that could trend somewhere closer to the 277 that he was as a rookie, but pretty comfortable that he is going to be a cornerstone of this team going forward. Moving on to the outfielders, Vinnie Pasquantina was up and down between Kansas City and Omaha. His batting ratings say that he should be more than he really is. He doesn't have a position defensively, and he didn't hit all that great this year. In 75 at-bats at the major league level, batted just 240, 79 OPS plus. So that was less production than he gave us a year ago when he hit 8 homers and 162 at-bats. He's kind of getting to the point where I think he's at a crossroads with this team. Jock Peterson, who in addition to Kike Hernandez was our big free agent signing, at least for the Royals in terms of our corner outfielder, had a solid season for us. 18 homers, 73 driven in, perfectly average 100 OPS plus. A little better than average with his 102 WRC plus, and put up a 2.2 WAR. Again, happy to have both he and Kike Hernandez back next year, but still want a little more offense out of our outfield. Juan Yepez helped with that. His second year with the big club, 17 homers and 409 at-bats and a 129 OPS plus, a WAR of 1.8 on the year. He is a very valuable corner outfield bat for us, primarily a left fielder, maybe a first baseman in a pinch. Michael A. Taylor has probably played his last game with the Royals. Batted .201 this year, over 518 at-bats. Excellent defensive center fielder, but just doesn't provide enough offense for us. Last I looked, he was looking for $6 million a year. Yeah, he's still looking for $6 million a year. I think at this point we're going to try to move on to somebody else. Kyle Isbell was up and down, spent most of the year in Omaha, to be honest, but did hit 332 down in Omaha and 314 in limited action, just 51 at-bats with a big club. similar to Vinnie Pasquantino, kind of getting to the point where we're going to either need to commit to these guys or move on from them. And Eddie's Leonard kind of fits that bill also. He was our Rule 5 acquisition. We did have him up on the big team all year. Hit 9 homers in 230 at-bats, but batted just 204, 75 OPS plus, and a minus 0.4 WAR. The good news is that now that we've had him up all of this season, he does have 3 option years left, so we can potentially give him a little more seasoning in Omaha next year and still have him as part of the organization. So he's still considered the number 98 prospect in baseball. Definitely has some pop in that bat as far as home run power, so could be an important player for us going forward, but I have a feeling he's probably going to end up at Omaha next season. So those are the highlights of the Kansas City Royals' performance in 2023 in our roster, and honestly, although we were a little better than we were a year ago as we head into the offseason, I think we still kind of have the same needs. Pretty happy with our catching, pretty happy with our infield. Need to add a bat in the outfield, and we're going to have to find a center fielder for next season. And then with our pitching rotation, still need to kind of find a frontline starter. Think the bullpen is good and think we have good depth in the rotation. We just don't have that clear-cut ace. So we're not going to have a ton of money to play with. Right now, it's looking like we're just going to have about $2 million when we do get into free agency for the next season. But there are moves that we can make to free up some money, most notably being Jeff McNeil, who I mentioned, who is due potentially $8 million in arbitration. That'll be a big decision for us. And there's several other arbitration-eligible players that we need to be thinking about. And the other option that we will have to potentially free up a little more money for free agency is our scouting budget and our development budget are both probably near the top of the league, both near maxed out, and I would imagine pretty high for a team with a relatively small market. So we can always pull some money from those budgets to go after a free agent if there's someone out there that we really want. The issue is that the big scouting budget and the big development budget are both paying huge dividends as our minor league system has ramped up and is now ranked first overall. Alex Vasquez and Juan Palomares, we've talked about both of them in the past. We invest a lot in scouting, and we have a great international scout, and they were both international scouting discoveries, the number 1 prospect in the game in Vasquez and the number 25 prospect in the game in Palomares have both happened over the last 10 months or so. So those have been huge. Spencer Bauer, Caleb Lagerwell, and Tyler Bosma were all pitchers that we picked in the 2022 draft. Bauer was a 15-rounder, but he has developed reasonably well and reasonably quickly. AAA this year, as well as a single A and high A. He pitched at three different clubs with us, and 4.43 ERA in Double A, so he doesn't look quite ready yet. Caleb Lagerwell, who was a 14th round pick last season, pitched in single A this year, 4.04 ERA. And then Tyler Bosma is the one who's moved up the most. He was our 5th round pick, so he was the one who we viewed as having the most potential a year ago when we drafted him. Split the season between high A, Double A, and then eventually Triple A. 5.60 ERA at Omaha, which was a 76 ERA plus, so not quite ready for the majors yet, but interesting player there. Ricardo Cabrera, youngster that we picked up from the trade of Salvador Perez to the Yankees a year and a half ago, is an 18-year-old this year, split time between single A and high A, and held his own at high A as an 18-year-old, batting 258, 98 OPS plus. Still think there's a lot of potential there. And then the last key prospect to note is Zac Disenza, who was our 8th round pick in 2022. split the season between AA and AAA and mashed 38 homers and drove in 107 runs between those two levels. So Disenza is a very interesting bat with lots of power, can play first base for us. Obviously, we've already got Pratto there. I think near term may work on seeing whether Disenza can train up in either left field or right field next year in spring training, and he could be an asset for us in those corner outfield spots going forward also. So definitely some potential in the farm system, but we probably are going to need to make some trades and or free agent signings to really address those critical needs, which would be a number one starter and a great defensive center fielder who's also got a big bat. We're just asking for Mickey Mantle or Joe DiMaggio or Ken Griffey Jr. Is that so hard to get? It probably will be, but we're going to give it a try. So that is the summary of the 2023 season for the Royals. Optimistic about the direction this playthrough and this club are headed, but obviously going to have a lot of work to do in the coming off season to hopefully get this team ready to win next year. Until our next episode, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day, and we'll be kind of covering the 2023 playoffs from afar since we are not a part of them, and heading into the start of the off season in our next episode here at Old School Sports. Have a great day.